Something about this situation still doesn't make sense. Charges were dropped, both sides are speaking out, and yet the internet is more divided than ever. Because if everything is supposedly over, then why does it feel like we're only seeing part of the story? And what really happened behind the scenes between Taylor and Dakota might be far more complicated than anyone expected. It all started with a move that shocked everyone. A major reality show that had already been announced and promoted was suddenly pulled just days before it was supposed to air. No warning, no buildup, just gone overnight. At first, fans were confused, but then everything changed when a video from 2023 surfaced online. The footage reportedly showed Taylor involved in a heated physical altercation with Dakota. And what made it even more disturbing was that her child was present during the incident. Suddenly, this wasn't just reality TV drama anymore. This was something deeper, something serious. And just like that, everything around her career came crashing down. But that video was only the beginning of what was about to unfold. Not long after, Taylor finally broke her silence, and what she shared painted a very different picture. Through statements released by her team, she described years of emotional and physical struggle, along with fear that had kept her from speaking out sooner. According to her side, this wasn't a single moment caught on camera. It was part of a much larger situation she had been dealing with behind closed doors. There were mentions of feeling trapped, of facing retaliation, and of staying quiet to protect herself and her children. The way it was framed made it clear she wasn't just responding to the video, she was trying to reclaim control of her story. And for a lot of viewers, that shifted how they saw everything. But just as people started leaning one way, the situation flipped again. Behind the scenes, things had already escalated into something much bigger. Both Taylor and Dakota had taken legal action against each other. Protective orders were filed on both sides, with each pointing to incidents that allegedly happened across different timelines. Not just one argument, not just one night, but multiple moments being brought into question. At that point, the narrative stopped being simple. This wasn't a clear victim versus villain situation anymore. It became messy, complicated, and uncertain. And that uncertainty is exactly what kept people watching, because now the question wasn't who was right, it was what actually happened. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get more intense, everything took another unexpected turn. After weeks of speculation and growing tension, prosecutors made a decision. They chose not to move forward with new charges. On the surface, that sounds like closure. But when you look closer, it raises even more questions. Because the decision wasn't about proving innocence. Reports suggest it came down to things like insufficient evidence and timing issues. Some claims were considered too old, while others didn't meet the legal threshold required in court. In other words, the case didn't move forward, but it also didn't fully answer what happened. And that gray area is exactly where the controversy exploded, because now both sides could walk away feeling like their version still stands. And that's when things got even more emotional. Shortly after the news broke, Taylor began posting again, but instead of directly addressing everything, her messages felt heavy, reflective, almost like someone trying to process something much bigger than what people could see online. She talked about patience, about silence, about reaching a breaking point. In one post, she described going through something so intense that it felt like living through a nightmare twice, once privately and then again in front of the entire world. There were references to healing, rebuilding, and even feeling freed from something she couldn't escape before. She also opened up about being diagnosed with PTSD in the past, suggesting that what she experienced may have had long-term effects, long before any of this became public. And that shifted the tone completely, because now this wasn't just about a viral video or a legal outcome. It became about what happens after everything falls apart. But while she was opening up emotionally, Dakota had been quiet. Until suddenly, he wasn't. Out of nowhere, Dakota released his own statement. And instead of denying everything outright, he took a different approach. He admitted he wasn't perfect, acknowledged mistakes, and apologized to people he felt he had hurt. But at the same time, he pushed back, claiming that the way everything had been portrayed publicly didn't reflect the full reality of what happened. He suggested there were parts of the story missing, context that people weren't seeing. And just like that, the uncertainty came rushing back. Because now, instead of clarity, there were two completely different perspectives standing side by side. Dakota also made something else clear. He was stepping away from the spotlight, from the chaos, and from everything tied to this situation. He said his focus was now on his son, on building a stable environment, and on leaving behind what he described as an unhealthy chapter. And if you read between the lines, it sounded like more than just a break. It sounded like an exit, which raised another major question. What happens to the shows they were a part of? Behind the scenes, the impact had already started spreading. Projects connected to both of them were being affected. Appearances were cut, filming was paused, and reports suggested that even other cast members felt uncomfortable continuing while everything was still unresolved. That kind of tension doesn't just disappear. Now, there's growing speculation about whether the original show will even continue in the same way, or at all. There are talks of spin-offs, new casts, and completely different directions, but nothing feels certain. Some fans are saying the show should go on without them, while others think the entire situation has changed things too much to ignore. And when a reality show starts losing its core storylines, it rarely comes back the same. But if you think that's where the drama ends, it doesn't, because the reaction online has been just as intense. Social media didn't hold back. As soon as updates started coming out, people began picking sides, and not quietly. Supporters rallied behind Taylor, pointing to her posts and her story as proof that there's more beneath the surface. Others questioned the situation entirely, focusing on the legal outcome and Dakota's statement. And then there were the fans calling out people around them. Even small interactions, like comments on posts, turned into full-blown controversies. Some cast members were accused of only showing support when it was convenient, while others were criticized for staying silent. It became less about the original situation and more about how everyone reacted to it, who spoke up, who didn't, and when. And that kind of pressure doesn't just fade away. So now we're left with a situation that feels unfinished. No charges moving forward, but no clear resolution. Two sides telling very different stories, careers shifting, shows changing, and an audience still trying to figure out what to believe. Because at the end of the day, this isn't one of those stories where everything gets wrapped up neatly. It's messy, it's emotional, and it leaves behind more questions than answers. Was this justice or just a lack of proof? Was the truth fully revealed, or are we still only seeing pieces of it? And maybe the biggest question of all, should they ever step back into the spotlight after something like this? Because sometimes walking away isn't just a choice, it's the only way forward. What do you think really happened here?